Hi folks, in today's GM Diary, we're going to be talking about time jumps. In most of your games, you're not going to want to play out every single moment of every single day around the table. So in those situations, I highly suggest that you kind of do time jumps, whether it's a short amount of time or even up to like maybe a couple of months, a year or two. And I'm going to get into a bunch of different examples of why you might want to time jump and then talk about a few different methods of how to do that both within a session as well as between sessions. The first example is travel. This is something that myself as a player, I always appreciate when we're doing long travel, kind of skipping over and maybe hitting a few highlights, but not needing to kind of do multiple rolls every single day to see how are we traveling, what kind of encounters are we running into, especially if they aren't anything that's really going to come up as far as the story or the plot. If it's just a bunch of random encounters, I would rather kind of skip over some of that and get to the actual story. So for travel, I think especially if you're doing a trip that's going to take multiple days, maybe several weeks, you can just kind of do a few rolls here and there and kind of highlight the travel, and I'll get more into that a little bit later. And then if you are doing a shorter travel, something that's just going to take a day, maybe you do play out that whole travel sequence, or maybe you don't if that is something that your table doesn't enjoy playing. And I think that's something that all of these kind of help you skip over those moments where your table isn't really into maybe that aspect of tabletop role-playing games, whether it's the exploration or the social or potentially even a little bit of combat. So with that, I think shopping is another great time where you can kind of just jump over time jump through the shopping experience instead of having to role play going to each different shop. You can just ask your players what they want and let them know whether they're able to get it and how much they are. Maybe do a couple rolls if people want to try and negotiate, but just kind of speed through and skip over that time. Similarly, information gathering is another great example of kind of skipping over, either speeding up or completely skipping over it if that is something your table does not particularly enjoy, whether it's going and talking to a bunch of different NPCs or going and reading stuff up in the library. In these cases, I think it's great to ask your players what is it that you're trying to find and how they are going about it, and then have them do a couple rolls and let them know the results. This is great if you have a table that doesn't enjoy that kind of going and finding the information. If you have players that are like, I don't care what's really in the library, I just want to get the information and jump back into the encounter. So that way you can just kind of get moving along. The biggest time that I have used time jumps is when you're kind of waiting. So this is like if you're planning a heist and you need to wait until it's dark out, or if you are waiting for a specific event, like you're like, okay, we've gotten all of our planning prepped and now we have to wait for this ball in order to meet and talk to the NPC that we need to, and that's in a week. Instead of role-playing through all of those moments, through those days, you can just jump to that next event, that next story beat. And then the last time I think time jumps can be very helpful is between story arcs. Most likely, your adventurers are not going to be adventuring back to back to back to back. And if they were, they would probably get pretty tired. This also allows for downtime, especially if you're playing in a system such as like Pathfinder that has downtime activity mechanics. So you can kind of set whether it's, okay, there's going to be a month between the end of this story arc and the beginning of this story arc, a week, maybe it's a year, whatever amount of time it is, that allows a little bit of downtime. Maybe there's some great kind of character advancement that happens during this time. You may want to line this up with maybe a significant level up. so that this kind of allows for that story explanation of suddenly gaining new abilities, because the wizard has had a month to sit and study in the library and practice and kind of learn these new spells, or perhaps the monk has had time to go and train with their mentor. It allows for a little bit of that time so that it's not just like, suddenly, yep, you finished this dungeon and now out of nowhere you've locked these new abilities. That's a potential opportunity for that kind of story explanation of the mechanics. Big thanks to all of our patrons, especially Joan. If you want to support our channel, you can head on over to patreon.com/rollforinitiative and check out the perks of being a patron. All right, let's get back to the video. Okay, so how do you go about doing a time jump? So there are kind of two different ways to go about it, either during the session or between sessions. So with between sessions, I think this is really great if you are wanting to skip over perhaps shopping or information gathering, where your players might need a little bit more time to kind of figure out what it is that they want or that they're looking for. You can potentially blue book it, deal with all of the roles and everything between those two sessions, kind of private messaging each other or chatting with your players and saying, what is it you're looking for? Okay, make a roll. Or it allows them to kind of think about what they want. And then once you come back to the start of your next session, you can then kind of resolve any of those rolls that need to be made. Definitely at the end of the session, let your players know there is going to be a time jump, kind of a rough estimate of how long and kind of what you are asking them to kind of think over or prep for the next session. And especially if you are using it kind of for that long period of time between story arcs, I think let your players know either we're going to have everybody kind of go around the table and say what their character has been up to over this month between these story moments, or you can kind of let it come up a little bit more organically, and you as the game master can kind of set the scene for reintroducing the characters back into the story. So then you can also time jump during session. Now you might want to do this especially for travel, or perhaps there is a little bit of that information gathering where you can kind of glaze over the details of it and give them whatever relevant information they need without role-playing out every single moment. Again, I think it's great to give your players a heads up before moving forward, especially if it's travel or jumping forward to a specific event. Make sure that you are giving your players that opportunity that if there was one last thing they wanted to prep, or if they're traveling and there are two players that say, hey, we want to have an in-character conversation, you give the players that opportunity before you jump to the next kind of story beat or time. And then I do think, especially during the session, it's great to kind of summarize to show the passage of time. If you're traveling, it might be summarizing kind of how the landscape is changing, or specific landmarks that they are passing, things that happen. You might have them make one or two rolls to see okay, make a survival check. All right, you did okay, but not great. So the traveling takes you an extra day because you wander off, you lose the path a little bit. That still allows for some flexibility of how well the travel goes, but you may not need to be doing all of that. Okay, every day we're going to roll for weather, we're going to roll for random encounters, which can take up quite a bit of time when perhaps the whole table just wants to go from point A to point B because what's going to happen at point B is the really exciting thing, and you don't want to deal with all of the time in between. So what about you? Have you used time jumps in other ways? Do you find a specific way of introducing time jumps or managing them? I'd love to hear about it down in the comments below so we can all help each other. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe because we make videos here every week all about tabletop role-playing games and our other geeky interests. All right, I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye! I did the intro, the meat of the video, and I did the outro. Is there anything I'm forgetting? I don't think so. we're still getting into the swing of things.